you have trained your brain to react a certain way when you eat certain food. Your brain is telling you to eat those foods. It's almost, I don't want to say out of your control because we can, but there's an aspect of it that makes it very difficult to change our diet.
I knew I wasn't going to be able to just overhaul my diet. Some people can do that. I was not one of them because we do like to eat and we do like to eat bad foods and it's programmed in us.
It's everywhere.
It is programmed. It's everywhere. Everything you watch on TV. I can't tell you how many McDonald's commercials I see every day.
And those trigger emotional hunger.
Exactly.
I love that you bring this up because a lot of people think about food in terms of weight, but not in terms of health.
Any and all opinions and views shared by hosts and guests on this podcast are the speaker's own and do not represent the views of Live It Up or its affiliates or parent company.
Hey everyone, welcome back to The Scoop, serving you straight nutrition talk, one scoop at a time. I am Rachel. I am a registered dietitian and nutrition expert, and today I have a guest. Her name is Angela, and she owns Liquivida in Naples, Florida. Great to meet you, Angela.
Rachel, great to meet you as well. Thank you so much for having me on your show. I appreciate it very much.
Absolutely. I love that you're here. Can you tell me a little bit about Liquivida?
I can. So Liquivida is a wellness center here in Naples. We opened in 2022. We kind of handle all aspects of health and wellness, from peptide therapy to hormone replacement therapy, as well as beauty on top of the health and wellness side. So we also do like Botox, so neurotoxins, fillers, facials, laser hair. We kind of do it all. So I'm super excited. It has been a journey, but I've, obviously opening this Liquivida has taught me a lot in terms of health and wellness. So I'm excited to continue my dialogue with you today.
Absolutely. Well, I know we were talking before, you mentioned that you have been on your own wellness journey that has spanned a few years and has become a lot more intensive in the last couple. Mm-hmm. I would love to chat about what that's been like for you because everyone's journey is different. Mm-hmm. And, we all take strange routes to get to the place where we feel our best. So, how did it start? How is it going?
So for me, my starting place was, for me, it started more on the mental health side. I had suffered quite a bit of trauma growing up as a kid, and kind of hit a place several times in my life where I kind of hit bottom. Had tried traditional talk therapy, had tried all the standard medications, depression, anxiety, tried everything that was out there under traditional medicine. And I just got to a place where I was numb and it wasn't working, and I just stopped everything. And then I stopped healing, and I just kind of shut down and said, this is my life. And this is the way it's going to be. And I just have to figure out a way to deal with it. And my coping mechanism was kind of pushing everything down and ignoring and working. And that's what I did. So prior to Liquivida, I worked in corporate. And so I'm a CPA by trade. And I worked for a Fortune 500 global pharmaceutical company. And
so a lot of stress in that.
Yeah, a lot of stress. And I just threw myself into my job. And then my son came along. My son, he was late in life for me. I was 37, almost 38 when I had him. And that's where I think I realized that I needed to make some changes. This little being is now, I'm wholly responsible for this being who's dependent on me for everything. And I was almost a train wreck. So, it's kind of like, but I really didn't know what to do, how to start, where to go. And I happened to have somebody in my life who was like, oh, come run this marathon with me. And I was like,
that's like, jumping into it.
Marathon. I was like, this girl doesn't even work out, let alone a marathon. But it triggered something. And I was like, okay, well, maybe I'll run the 5K instead. Because she was like, run the 5K. I was like, okay, I think I can do that. Well, then I started to train for the 5K. And then I realized that my body was definitely, as easy as running looks, it's not necessarily the easiest thing to do. So I was like, needed to start finding ways to recover. And I went to a local place in Pittsburgh, which is where I'm from. And I started cryotherapy, and I was like, this kind of works. And then I started like IV therapy, so vitamin IV therapy. And then I started NAD, and I started to just feel a little bit better, physically. So I was kind of started on this journey and did the 5K. joined forces with a not-for-profit in Pittsburgh called Pittsburgh Action Against Rape. I started raising money for them, and it really started very small with just that race. And from there, everything kind of morphed into where I am today. So that was my starting place. And then now fast forward 10 years after that, and I moved to Florida from Pittsburgh. I opened this business. As you can imagine, there's a lot of stress to a business, as you're well aware. And there were a few places where I got sidetracked, and then just the overwhelming sense of stress and of running this business. And it's a big business. It's not small. I started catching up again, and I could kind of feel my mental health kind of creeping backwards again. And so I was really getting to that low again, and I was like, I don't know what to do. And so a friend of mine, a dear friend of mine, sat down with me, and he listened to me sob for an hour and was like, I've heard of ayahuasca. I think you should try ayahuasca. And I was like, what? He said, you know what Aaron Rodgers did? And I was like, okay, well, I know who Aaron Rodgers is, so that's a good first start. But I said, I really, I'd heard about him going off in the woods and doing whatever, but I didn't know what it was. And then I started doing some research, and he connected me with a few other people in the Naples community that had gone on their own ayahuasca journeys. And by the time we were done, I was like, okay, sign me up.
Yeah.
So I went to Costa Rica back in June, and went on my ayahuasca journey. And for those who don't know what ayahuasca is a plant-based medicine that's administered by a shaman. And it is something that they use to help reprogram. So for me, at least in a trauma situation, it's helped to kind of reprogram the wires that are crossed. So you come out, you purge what you are what's kind of locked up inside of you, whatever that may be, and everybody's different. But it's also something that's a rewiring exercise as well. So I had a 3-day, we were there for a week, and I had 3 different ceremonies. And what became abundantly clear to me as part of my ceremonies is I wasn't taking care of myself. And not taking care of yourself is when you're not working on yourself, you can't get better. You have to find ways, right? So it was very clear to me I wasn't going to the doctors as I should have been. I wasn't doing the tests I should have been doing. And it was very clear to me I wasn't eating the way that I was to be eating. And so I kind of walked out of that and was like, time to change. I came home, started working on the different tests. I started having blood tests done, and I started going to all the doctor's appointments that I hadn't gone to in 2 to 3 years, flushing through everything. And when my blood work came back, my A1C was a 6.
Okay.
My heart was inflamed in certain ways. And there was some inflammation, and I had Hashimoto's. So
wow.
I was, So, and as I talked to my practitioners, and they're like, as I'm having a panic attack, they're like, this is okay. This is all manageable with diet. And I was like, what? This is all manageable with diet. And I was like,
stop it.
Stop. And there's
got to be a magic pill, right?
Exactly, right.
Can't just eat my way out of it.
Exactly. But at the same time, I was also like, oh, what do you mean I have to change my diet? The whole thought of having to change my diet was like, whoa.
It's amazing because we can talk about changing a diet and it feels, far away, right? But you can't, it's not a drug. You can't just cut out food and survive. You actually have to eat food to survive. So changing a diet when you've eaten a certain way for a long time feels almost unmanageable because you think about the big picture. You don't think about this tiny thing. So did you start small? Did you start with small steps?
I had to, because for me, the start was mental, because I like to eat. And I like to eat bad foods. So, and
as many people do, don't feel bad.
I was going to say, and that's why I had this visceral reaction to changing my diet, because I was like, that of all the things that I have to change, my diet is probably the hardest, because I like to eat. I like to eat bad foods. And it's hard, like, running a business, you're running from place to place. I don't always have time to sit down. I don't have an hour to eat sometimes in a whole day, let alone in one sitting. So to be able to, and I can't cook. I'm not a cook. So for me, the thought of changing my diet was more overwhelming than anything else they could have given me.
And not only that, but you have trained your brain to react a certain way when you eat certain foods. And so your brain is telling you to eat those foods. And it's almost, I don't want to say out of your control because we can, but there's an aspect of it that makes it very difficult to change our diet. And of course, our lifestyles don't help, when we're really busy, finding those easy options. So starting small, starting mental, I like that because that helps you prepare for the change.
So I took a couple of weeks. I have to admit, I took a couple of weeks and was trying to digest what this meant and trying to digest how I was going to take on this idea of changing my diet. So it took me a couple of weeks and then I was like, okay, I knew I couldn't do it in large chunks. I knew I wasn't going to be able to just overhaul my diet. Some people can do that. I was not one of them. Some people, it's like, I need to make this change.
Flip a switch.
And they can flip a switch and they can do that. Yeah. I was not one of those people. And I bring this up because I think a lot of people are in my shoes because we do like to eat and we do like to eat bad foods. And it's programmed in us.
It's everywhere.
It is programmed. It's everywhere. Everything you watch on TV. I can't tell you how many McDonald's commercials I see every day.
And those trigger emotional hunger.
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. But they're also culturally what we've grown up with too. And so it's like, those are huge staples. Not that I eat McDonald's. I really don't. But I use that as an example because, my kid, I'll use that as an example for him. He sees it all the time. So anytime he wants something, he wants McDonald's. But for me, I was really struggling because I really like bad food. And so, and I never had a weight issue. So I never had to cut things out of my diet. There was a point in time I did, but it was kind of the mid 40s where you're like, oh, man, there are a lot of hormones, a lot of other things.
Yeah.
But I never really had an issue with my weight.
And you know what? I love that you bring this up because a lot of people think about food in terms of weight, but not in terms of health.
Exactly.
And, not all calories are created equally. We can eat cookies and lose weight, but we are not going to feel good.
Right.
So
you're correct.
Yeah.
You're correct. Even if I look at my labs, I'm like, people would look at me and say, I have people look at me and say, you're crazy if you tell me you have a 6 for A1C. I'm like, I have a 6 for A1C. There's no way you have a 6 for A1C. You're fit, you're thin, you're like, there's no way. So it's even the markers are associated with people who are overweight, and that's not necessarily the case. And so it's just as important whether you're overweight, where you're supposed to be, or thin, that you're following up not only with your diet, but with your labs and making sure that you're where you need to be because you really don't know.
You don't know.
You don't know. And for me, that challenge of I never correlated. I didn't know anything about food, dieting, being a dietitian, nutrition, nothing. So for me, I never correlated it to long-term health. Of course, if you eat better, you're going to feel better. But am I going to die at 60 instead of 80 because I'm not eating? I just assume we all live, right?
Yeah.
So for me, not understanding all of these years that what I ate and how I feel my body affected my long-term health. I never thought about it. And I think a lot of people are in that same position. Right. They don't think about it.
Most of my clients that come in or people I talk to, we just think about the now.
Yeah.
We're how is this helping me right now?
Right.
And most of things that help us in terms of diet and even what you do, it takes time. It takes commitment and perseverance, and it takes little tiny steps to build up to that bigger goal.
Yeah, it does. And so when I started, I had to start small for that reason. It was a mental thing, but also my body was craving food that I'd been eating for all these years. And so I started small, and it's still very small. I'll be honest. Like it's probably 40, 60 right now. And 40 not in the direction I want it to be yet, but we're getting there.
Good.
For me right now, it's more about making sure that I'm eating. And so that I'm not letting the days pass. But the small changes within my diet, like I was never a big protein eater.
Yeah.
Not that I was ever a vegetarian or anything like that. But for me to sit down and eat and prepare a meal when you don't cook is difficult. So I started being more thoughtful and conscious with what I was ordering online. And then I also started going to the grocery store. I stopped going to the grocery store because I can just have my groceries delivered.
Yes.
But like everybody else, I wouldn't order my meats and I wouldn't order vegetables and fruit because I didn't know what people would put in my cart. And I would get what my opinion was, sometimes I would get subpar vegetables and fruit.
That is why I don't do grocery delivery.
Exactly. So then I stopped doing grocery deliveries because I wasn't ordering any of that. And then I wasn't going to the grocery store to pick it out myself. So I was just eating garbage is what was happening. So I stopped, not only were there certain changes that I started making to start consuming more protein, but also I stopped ordering my groceries in. What I noticed as I started consuming more protein was I wasn't as hungry as much. I was full. So if I ate protein before I went to bed, I wasn't waking up in the morning starving, ready to get something and this quick fix. So as I started eating more protein, I realized I was more full and I didn't have to eat quite as much. But I also wasn't craving the garbage that I was craving over time. It took time. I didn't get there overnight, but I don't crave as much as I did before because I'm very intentional and I'm trying to get more protein into my diet, whether that's red meat or whether that's chicken or whether it's turkey or pork, whatever it may be. Yeah. I'm trying. And I know there's other options for protein as well that are not meat focused. But for me, it's meat focused. I like meat.
It's good that you noticed those changes,
right?
Because I feel like I can say this over and over again, but no one will recognize the benefit until they do it.
Right.
And then realize, oh, look at all the things that this did for me. And it was just a small change.
Yeah.
So it's good that you're building that habit and that it sounds like you're focusing on that. And it's something that you keep bringing attention to for yourself.
Yep. I am. And then I think for me, the other thing that I started doing was making sure that I had blueberries in the refrigerator. So in the morning I could work on blueberries because they're full of antioxidants. And I'm just like, it doesn't fill me up, but at least had something, right?
Yep.
And then I'm slowly working Greek yogurt into my diet, the plain Greek yogurt that I can pair with the blueberries. I'm not 100% there yet, but it's in my refrigerator sitting.
Here's a tip. Okay. So yes, we say, you'll hear a dietitian be like, plain Greek yogurt, but you could get like fruit on the bottom and just like, don't mix it in.
Okay.
So you're still getting some flavor and you scoop it off and you leave it at the bottom.
Okay.
And then you're not getting as much of the added sugar.
Okay.
So like, and maybe that'll help make it more enticing. That is an intermediate step.
Okay.
To plain. Like if your ultimate goal is plain, maybe make that step first.
Okay.
That could be helpful.
I'll look at that. Well, I don't want the plain yogurt to go to waste that I have in my refrigerator. So I really just need to, I really need to just get brave and just do it.
Just do it. You know what? A little honey.
Okay.
Is going to be okay because you have the protein in there.
Okay.
And that's going to slow down how fast your blood sugar goes up. So having a little bit of honey in there is going to be okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
Explain the honey again. I'm sorry.
So if you put honey in there for a little bit of sweetness, like you could do it with the blueberries and maybe this will help you get over that hump of.
Got it.
Yeah.
Got it.
And to also, of course, if you use too much, it will raise your blood sugar, but you don't have to fear it because if you just do a drizzle, because protein takes longer to digest.
Okay.
The honey won't affect your blood sugar.
Okay.
Because you're pairing it with protein and fiber from the blueberries.
Got it.
So both of those things slow down how fast you release blood sugar.
Okay. Well, that's good to know. I'll definitely, I didn't know that. So again, and that's what this is. It's like, it's a learning journey.
Yeah.
I've started to, again, as I start to focus on it more and as I start to see that as I make these smaller changes, that it's making bigger changes for me. I don't even have to really work at it. It's making bigger changes for me because as it just becomes a little bit easier.
Yeah.
And I can't say like I feel a ton better.
Yeah.
I think, unfortunately, when you have a business and you have kids, whatever, 1, 2, 5, whatever you have, it's constant. Like I'm never going to feel amazing. You know what I mean? Like I'm never going to get up and feel like an Energizer bunny. So I think getting over that hump too, because I think a lot of times people are like, but I don't feel any better. But you don't know what's going on the inside.
Yeah.
And so I just had my labs redrawn yesterday. So I'll get those back next week and I'll be interested to see what changes have been made, within my A1C numbers. Specifically, my cholesterol numbers were also elevated. So I'm interested to see what has gone on with those numbers, even with some small changes. Because I tell my clients, a lot of the services that we do, there isn't necessarily this bang for your buck where you feel great the next day. Yes, of course, if you're not feeling well and you do a high dose of vitamin C, you're probably going to feel a little better the next day. That's instant gratification. But a lot of the other things that we do are working internally, trying to reset age, number one, because as you get older, a lot of things, you don't produce what you used to produce, right? So your body's not naturally producing what it used to produce. So you're already starting at a deficit. Most likely you haven't been eating well most of your life too.
It takes a long time to reverse that.
It does. And it takes time to reverse that. And so having people understand that they just need to be patient and just let it run its course. is definitely something that we definitely struggle with.
Yeah.
Because it's just like, well, I don't feel, you need to just give it a little bit longer.
And slow change is long-term change.
I agree. And it's interesting because people think, well, it is just really this small change, but it really does make a huge difference. You don't have to change everything overnight.
Yeah.
And that one change leads to another small change, leads to another small change. And before you know it, you have a chain of changes.
That's right.
That ends up being something big.
I love to talk about micro habits because they are sustainable and they are bite-sized, and you can wrap your mind around it and achieve it and not feel like a failure because it was something too big.
Yes.
So, yeah.
And I think too, as we talk about, there's a lot of things in our foods today that really shouldn't be in our foods. And people don't necessarily understand the preservatives, the additives, the pesticides, and I didn't either. And I have like a small drop in the bucket of what I know. But the more I read and the more I hear, the more I'm like, oh my God, like what? So I think could we talk a little bit about that? Like I said, I'm not as educated as I need to be, but I want to talk a little bit about sort of what's in our foods that probably shouldn't be in our foods. What do we need to pay attention to? What do I need to look for? Like what types of things do I really need to make sure that I'm reading a label to make sure that I'm not including in my diet?
Yeah. Well, you hit on the big ones. So preservatives, there are certain synthetic antioxidants that food industry makes so that they don't have to use antioxidants from real foods. Like vitamin E and vitamin C are both antioxidants that help preserve our food, and they're natural and they're fine. And you'll see them in foods called like tocopherols or ascorbic acid. And that is normal and fine, right? If you see that as a preservative, you're good. But then they'll make other ones that act as antioxidants in a food, but they protect the food, help them be more shelf stable. They work like they do in our body in terms of like helping protect us from damage. But the problem is the synthetic ones do not act the same way in our bodies. So things like BHA and BHT are synthetic antioxidants that they use as preservatives, and those we want to avoid because those have been linked to poor health outcomes. And they are banned in other countries. Different food dyes are definitely things we want to be aware of because they've been linked to hyperactivity and irritability in children. Artificial sweeteners can disrupt our gut microbiome. So all these, it's like an organ. There's trillions of bacteria in our gut. And they have found that the gut bacteria can help inform our immune system, can help inform our mood because it talks to our brain via the central nervous system. And they do so much for our body. They actually produce different vitamins and minerals that we need. So if we don't have a good gut microbiome, then we are not going to be in our best health. And some of these preservatives and artificial sweeteners disrupt the gut microbiome.
Okay.
So, those are the big things to watch out for. And in general, the more we stick to like a whole foods diet and we minimize the processed foods, the easier it's going to be to keep those things out. But even within any of the aisles you go to, there could be a food like a bread that has the natural preservatives and has more fiber than the others and is like a better option. And then there's a bread out there that looks the same.
Okay.
But has all the bad stuff. And when we take a look at the ingredient list, we can get an idea of, all right, these look like foods that I've seen, ingredients that I've seen, and this one, they're ingredients that really look like they shouldn't be in there.
Okay.
So it's like being your own sleuth.
Okay.
It's like understanding. But again, you're moving toward eating more whole foods and moving away from too many processed foods. Honestly, I'm an all in moderation type of person. So having a few processed foods here and there, it's not going to kill you.
Right.
Especially when you're getting all the good nutrients from the whole foods, the fruits and the vegetables and the lean proteins. These are all giving us things that our body needs to help protect against that damage.
Okay.
So it's a balance. It's trying to find like, how are you going to be happy and satisfied in how you eat? And that might include processed foods.
Right.
It's just as long as that's not the basis of what we eat, we're on the right path.
Okay. How do you counsel your clients in terms of changing their diet? Like, especially like with somebody like me as an example, who's come along and is like, changing my diet is a really big deal. And like, that is to me like the end of the world, you know, for somebody who's initially hearing it and knowing nothing, you know, I at least had some knowledge in the health and wellness space. So it made it a little bit easier. I just knew it was something I had to get over and I had to do. But for people who really don't understand that connection between what you put in your mouth, how that impacts your health and how it impacts disease, how do you counsel your clients when they look at you with like the, you know, with the deer in the headlights look like, what? You want me to what?
Well, you know, the funny thing is, Angela, most people come to me once they have a problem.
Yeah.
Because they don't do preventative nutrition, you know? And it's just like you said, because we don't think about it. We're not taught to think about it. But we can go through like, let's do a little session. Are you ready?
Yep, I'm ready.
Okay. Tell me about your vegetable intake, Angela.
This week it was a little better than the 6 weeks before. Let's say that. I got broccoli in twice this week, which I probably hadn't done in 6 weeks. Yeah,
that's perfect. So you got broccoli in twice, and then the other times were there no vegetables, just like a meat and like a grain?
Yeah, it was generally like a meat and nothing on the side.
Just a meat. Okay.
Yeah.
You're getting your protein. I'm very proud of you.
I'm definitely getting my protein. It's the other stuff that I struggle with. Yeah.
So when it comes to vegetables, the most important thing about vegetables is that they are high in nutrients, lots of vitamins and minerals. They're high in fiber. Fiber feeds our good gut bacteria, but also keeps us regular.
Yep.
And they have lots of antioxidants that protect us from free radicals, which can cause the inflammation, extra aging. We need more antioxidants so that we can protect our cells from DNA damage of these other foods that we're eating, of environmental toxins like pollution. So the more fruits and vegetables we eat, the more antioxidants we get to protect our cells from this damage and internal inflammation, which, as you know, is like the basis of chronic disease.
Yeah.
So hearing how important vegetables are, what is one small goal that you could make for next week?
I definitely need to eat more vegetables. I know that. I definitely need to eat more vegetables.
Well, don't show it on your
next week. So for next week, and I've been working with a woman who's doing meal prep for me.
Great.
That for me is huge because again, it's the cooking aspect for me. So I have committed that when I go to put my order in next week, that I will do 3 days of some kind of vegetable.
I love it.
Yet. What is the difference between? I also hear a lot of cooked vegetables aren't as good as raw vegetables because all the nutrients are like
talk about it.
Thieved out of them. So yes, please. So talk to me about
there's benefit to both.
Okay.
So raw has water-soluble vitamins, right? Which are heat. They're not heat tolerant. So they break down when we cook. So when you're eating raw, you're getting a lot of those water-soluble vitamins, the A, the C, or not the A, the C and the B vitamins are water-soluble. And so we want to get some raw foods for those, right?
Okay.
If we're talking about cooked, so people will be like, I'm going to eat spinach because it has high iron. Well, you know what the problem is? It's bound to the fiber. So you can't eat raw spinach to get iron.
Okay.
You have to have it cooked.
Okay.
And you should have it with a squeeze of lemon because that's vitamin C. And vitamin C and iron help to absorb each other. Okay?
Okay.
So there are benefits to both cooked and raw. And so we can't just eat one or the other and expect to get everything that's in that fruit or vegetable. It's all about a variety.
Okay. Okay. I did not know that about spinach because I'm like, I'm eating spinach in my salads, but then that doesn't work because...
Well, the iron, but you're getting vitamin C from that. You're getting the fiber. It's still important in the raw form.
Okay.
So it's, and you know, going back to you saying I'm going to commit to 3 days of vegetables, that's exactly what I would want a client to say.
Okay.
Because it's not saying I'm going to do it 5 days and then I would probably backtrack them and say like, is that really feasible for you? Is that achievable?
Yeah.
It's not, like one at a time. And then you say, okay, I'm going to do that for like 3 weeks in a row.
Okay.
And then you say, all right, now I'm going to go to 4.
Okay.
And the goal after that is like, okay, now I'm going to do a different vegetable, you know, like because every fruit and vegetable has a different array of vitamins, minerals, and antioxidants. So if you just eat one type, you're only getting a very small segment of what your needs are.
Okay.
So it's about variety within.
Okay.
So, but it's slow. It's a slow process.
I got it. Yeah. And and there's so much information out there too. And there's so many foods when you think about it too. And they all have their, their idiosyncrasies, if you will. And so not, again, starting from nowhere, actually is negative when you don't know anything. Right. And so knowing kind of where to go, where do you go for this information? I mean, obviously finding a nutrition coach I think is important, but where do you, if that's not always doable for everybody. So where do you go to find this the right information? Because Google is a rabbit hole, and you go down it, and before you know it, you've got your head full of stuff that you don't. That's not right.
It's really hard on the internet to decipher what is actual positive research-backed information about nutrition and what was put out there by someone where one thing worked for them, which might not work for everyone.
Right.
Right. So it might work for other people, but who are you getting your information from? So you want to make sure that wherever you're finding that information, it does have someone of nutrition expert behind it.
Right.
And not just like a random social media influencer. And sometimes good information comes from them, and sometimes not good information comes from them.
Right.
So it really is hard to decipher where that information comes. So you do want to make sure that when you're looking at information, it's coming from like a reliable source, usually like a dietitian or like a certified nutritionist. Sometimes doctors, but doctors don't get a lot of nutrition training and they don't know a lot about nutrition, and they give often the wrong information when you're in the doctor's office.
Yeah. And that's scary. And I know we've talked about this a lot on my podcast too, which is, the struggle with the medical industry is, they're also have their hands tied, you know what I mean? Between insurance companies and, the pharma companies. And, it's hard to even get their answers because they can't order the tests they need to order. They don't, blood work. I had a full panel, like a full panel done. Cause I was like, when I came back from ayahuasca, I was like, I need to know everything is okay. And I had a full panel done. And even after insurance, it cost me $1,500. And I have good insurance. Yeah. I had it done in Pennsylvania. I have good insurance. Like there's no reason. And it was still another $1,500. Yeah. So, and that's not even like a cancer panel. That's just straight blood work. Now it was 26 tubes and it was 12 pages of
You let a lot of blood out that day.
I definitely did. I definitely did. But I was like, I just need to know. And I was like, and I'm fortunate enough that, I have practitioners that can write what I need and that I necessarily have to worry that I have to pay for it.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, again, not everybody has access to that either. So it's part of the problem with our medical industry.
It is part of the problem. I completely agree with you. And, it looks at things retroactively instead of proactively.
Mm-hmm.
The issue is also that people won't go to the doctor or to, figure out what's wrong with them because it costs money, but then all of a sudden they have an extreme event.
Yeah.
And then it costs a ton of money.
Exactly.
And so putting in the effort and investing in your health,
right,
for what you do,
right,
for what I do, is so important for people to understand that if you put a little bit in now, you're going to come out on the other side without those huge payments.
Right.
What
I try to say too is that for me, it's the financial side is one piece of it, but I'm trying to extend my life for my son. So I want to live every day longer that I can, every second longer that I can for him.
Yeah.
And I think as I opened this business and really started to delve into a lot of the preventative work that we do, it really became clear to me that we really can change our lifespan. We really can make that difference in ourselves without needing a lot of help, at least from the medical side, or, it's at our fingertips.
It is.
And why I'm so passionate about what I do, and even with my podcast, I want people to people don't talk about it enough and don't understand enough. Yeah. So they don't, then they're like, well, everything's fine. But if you start hearing about different ways to treat mental health,
yes,
versus taking Zoloft or Wellbutrin or whatever it is you're taking, or whether you're treating obesity with, this fad diet, or whether you're treating whatever ailment you're trying to cure.
Yeah.
In a lot of cases, there's something that's better than what the medical industry can offer you.
Yes.
And, a lot of the medications that we put in our body aren't good for us.
Mm-hmm.
But people are like, well, the doctor wrote it. Right.
Yeah.
What's to do? I have an issue,
He's
right?
Professional.
Right.
Yeah.
And, myself, I've had a thyroid issue for 25 years. I've been on Synthroid for 25 years. Yeah. My practitioners are like, no, you need to get off of this. We have a more natural way of handling a thyroid issue. But I had no idea that existed.
Right.
And so I think what I'm trying to do is bring to the masses that there are different things that you can do to help not only extend your life, but feel better while you're extending your life. And at the same time, that we can bring our kids up differently as well. Because I think, we have a generation of kids that are, I think between our generation and our children's generation, that generation's a bit lost, because that's where kind of all hell broke loose, if you will.
Yeah.
Right. I think a lot of things started changing with food. A lot of things started changing with how, how kids, it's that whole self-gratifying, that instant gratification today. So a lot has changed for kids from our generation to our children's. And what I'm trying to change with my son, and listen, there's by no means perfection, because we've got a lot of things to still work on.
It's also not easy.
Right. It's not easy. None of this is easy.
Yeah.
But if he sees me working out, if he sees me trying to change my diet, if he sees me trying to extend my life, then hopefully those habits wear off onto him.
Yeah.
And that he'll see things a little bit differently as he gets older and want something better. But at the end of the day, my only goal is that I can extend my life to a point that it's also good. Yeah. Not that I'm just, locked up somewhere and I can't do anything, but that I live a good life, a meaningful life. But every second I can live longer for him is my ultimate goal.
Absolutely.
And I want to see him grow. I want to see him have his own kids, and I want to see him be healthy and happy. And, and I also want him to see that it's possible to make change. Change is scary. It's not easy, but it is possible to change, and it's possible to kind of go out in life and do what it is that you want to do.
Yeah.
Instead of, watching video games all day, or, doing the things that, a lot of kids are doing. And I want him to see something different. And it just, for me, it's scary. And I don't know where the world's headed and what we're going to be doing. But if we can somehow live healthier and better and extend our lives, I think, for a lot of people, it's just good. But the information's not there. And even like with ayahuasca as an example, that information wasn't readily available to me, but it worked, and it worked better than the 20 years I was lost in trying to find my way. But not everybody knows about it. Nutrition's another thing. I had no idea that what I was putting in my body could affect how long I lived on this earth. Now I know, and now I'm trying to change it. There's so much out there that people don't know.
There is. And you are his best role model. So it's excuse me, so wonderful that you are making these changes and they're visible to him. And I'm sure, occasionally you're like, try some blueberries, because that's what we do as parents.
Yeah.
But you're right. There's so much more that we could do. And we work very similarly. We work to help people from the inside out. Right. Exactly. And really the ultimate goal is for them to understand that it does take patience.
Right.
And it takes commitment. And it takes understanding that the changes happen inside before you can really feel them on the outside.
Right.
But they are happening.
Right.
And it is important.
It is.
And, maintaining that strategy or finding a new one, is going to be really critical for long-term health.
I agree completely.
Thank you so much, Angela. It's been a pleasure to chat with you. I'm so glad that you came by.
Thank you, Rachel, for having me. I appreciate it.